What's up guys, my name is Timbo and welcome back to another episode of The Mystery Behind. Now I gotta admit, I was not planning on making this video. The process to getting here is kinda weird. For a while now I have had one Destiny theory video in mind, but there wasn't enough substance going along with it. There was something missing. However, after the release of the latest Forsaken trailer, it all kind of came together. So even though I don't think I'm going to be able to make a ton more of these Mystery Behind videos, today I hope to take advantage of this and bring you all a juicy spicy one. Now I gotta say real quick, I am so excited to bring you all this type of content again. It's just fun and refreshing really. It's not what I want to get known for and get pinned to on YouTube, Destiny lore, but I don't know, I just enjoy this sort of thing and the discussion it brings out in all of you. But without wasting any more time, it's no secret what this video is about. Our three-eyed friend, Eris Morn. So without further ado, let's get into it. So last year around this time, I made a video on Eris. And while it's always been in the back of my mind, I never thought it was a good time to make a follow-up to it. There wasn't really enough information out there, it seemed. But there have been some things pointed out to me, specifically from my friend who I'll add is a great hugger, Bubsy, as well as the Forsaken trailer as I've said before, that have caused me to want to make this video. Before we get into all the theory and stuff like that, let's recap what we know about Eris's current location. The last time we've actually seen her doing something in-game was an end credit scene in The Taken King. In it, she says this.
The Guardian was the key. For the first time, the whispers are silent. It is done. I have accepted my fate. I will not fail.
At the time of my last video, I talked about how this queen Eris is referring to is most likely the Queen of the Reef, Eris Sov. If you can remember, at the beginning of the Taken King's campaign, Mara is talking to Eris, referring to Eris as her hidden friend. Mara talks of how the Awoken have played their part, and she seeks help from Eris to get the Guardians to defeat Oryx. Of course, Eris does this, informing the Vanguard about the Taken. So it seems very likely that Eris would be referring to Eris Sov at the end of the story to wrap things up. The one weird piece of information in all this is Eris's fate, but we will get into more of that later. After that, back around the Age of Triumph, not House of Triumph, as I realized I only said after rendering that last video, Eris was involved in some Grimoire cards. In them, as I'll just spark note by them, she talked about leaving the tower. Not the new one, the old one that got exploded. The reasoning for such was pretty vague, but she mentions that this was the only way to truly put an end to the vast and ancient hate of the Hive. There is also a small interaction between her and Asher Mir, but it's kind of insignificant for the sake of the specific things we're discussing in this video, if you ask me. So by the looks of it, from the outside, Eris helps the Queen of the Reef. She accepts some unknown fate most likely given to her by Mara, and ventures outside the safety of the city to finally put an end to the Hive. This is all of the information we know of right now, and I think most people can agree on this being true. From here on out though then, comes all the speculation and theory. Now before we get into this, I want to disclaim some things. Theory does not mean it's true or going to be true. It's just taking what we know so far, gathering anything else, using that as clues, and trying to forge a story out of it. At the very least, whether these are true or not, they should at least be fun to talk about. That's the whole point of these videos. In the past, I've been both right and wrong. I've been wrong about the console, I've been wrong about the stranger. Many people to this day tell me that those theories are better than what we actually got, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn here, but I agree. That doesn't mean that the theories I came up with were great by any means. I think it more so just speaks to how bad the stories are in this game. I will say though that in my Uldren video last year, I did say this. Being honest, it wouldn't surprise me if Bungie is setting up all these little character arcs like this to save them for later. Bungie has said how Destiny 2 won't have content droughts like Destiny 1 did, so it wouldn't surprise me if we saw an Uldren and the Fallen expansion one day after Osiris and Rasputin pass, instead of some dumb reskin Valentine's Day Crucible mode. But that's just me, and honestly, I could see either one of these things happening. So boys, we got one. Let's keep the momentum going. And last but not least, I know some people take the grimoire cards as gospel and will write some entire novel in the comments about how there's some little contradiction and get all triggered and stuff. And for those people, I have this to say. First of all, you're taking this way too seriously and are ruining the fun for other people. Secondly, I don't really care if things don't add up. Newsflash, nothing makes sense in this game anyway. I'd rather them do something interesting that contradicts some paragraph on an external website than just be so boring and one-dimensional all the time. Okay, it happens all the time in stories, even the best ones. It's called a plot hole. Very similar to what people call you. No, I know my sarcastic humor rubs people the wrong way, okay? I'm joking. This channel is all about love. All I'm saying is this. You cannot take this so seriously about me contradicting the lore when in the same game you're trying to defend, done by the people actually making the game, you have stuff going on like Iron Banner, where Lord Saladman doesn't even know who you are anymore, and in the same game where it takes 9 hours and 6 people to defeat Oryx, but you can defeat a worm god, the most powerful being in the whole hive, all by yourself with nothing but some kinetic bullets and a dubstep spear. Okay, glad that's out of the way. Now let's actually talk about the fun stuff. What I want to start with is this. Some of you out there might be a little curious as to how I even know Eris is coming. Well, let me show you the best way I can. I'm going to play back to a scene from Destiny 2 that I'm sure you've seen before. However, this time, I want you to take note and pay close attention. After I play it, we can see if you caught it. Sound fun? No? Well, too bad, I'm going to play it anyway. Okay, so that was obviously the scene at the end of Destiny 2's campaign. And the one thing I want to point out here that you may or may not have noticed is the order of the planets it shows. It goes from Mercury, to Mars, to the Reef, to Saturn. And where have all of Destiny 2's expansions taken place so far? Mercury, Mars, and the Reef. In that order. If this trend continues, the next expansion for Destiny 2, whenever it's supposed to come out, should take us back to Saturn and the Dreadnought. During the Age of Triumph, 2 characters in particular had lore about their current whereabouts released, Uldren Sov and Eris Morn. We know when Uldren is coming. If this does not connect us to Eris, I do not know what does. If you're asking me, the only question that really remains is, what is she doing? And from here we have 3 possibilities in my mind. We have the boring likely one, the slightly less boring one, and the crazy one that's cool, but kind of contradictory. So if we start with the likely boring one, it would be consisting of Eris contacting us to fight some big evil thing. Typical Bungie story. If you ask me, I think it's pretty obvious one way or another who we'd be fighting, and that of course would be Savathun. Savathun is one of Oryx's sisters, and so to me it would just make the most amount of sense for her to want to claim his power now that he's dead. I don't know if this has anything to do with the worm god we see on Titan, but I could see there being a reason why Savathun's strike is on Titan. Maybe she's trying to learn how to harvest light out of Guardians, to learn how to harvest the power out of Oryx's body and or worm, who knows. Either way though, I can just see it now. Next expansion has Eris contacting us because Savathun is trying to capture the power of Oryx, or maybe at this point she has, so now Eris needs our help to kill her or something. Typical Bungie story here, like I said. And I don't mean to say that as an insult or anything, it's just what happens most of the time. I don't think there's anything wrong with a pretty generic sounding premise. Some of the best stories have them. It's what you do with that premise and the characters involved that make it good. In Destiny, the only reason why people don't like the stories is generally because nothing happens. There's no effect on the world, there are no twists, and every character is the same at the end as they were at the beginning. Now as we move forward, we get slightly crazier. And you guys know I like crazy. This is where we go deep down the theory hole and start proposing some just weird stuff. So instead of in the last one where Eris's fate is just, I'm going to kill the Hive because they're evil, we can still assume that Eris is still talking to Mara Sov, but instead of Eris trying to kill the Hive, Mara wants her to become their new ruler. If we look at Uldren, when he took over the Fallen, it was said that he could feel a hum of starlight. This hum was supposed to mean that Mara was proud of him. Now, like I said, there are some holes that need covering in this, and I know Eris hates the Hive, but who knows, maybe her queen wants her to take them over for power, for alliance, for whatever. And last but not least, this was a big thing that was brought up in my Eris video last year, so I figured I would mention it. And literally hundreds of you out there thought that Eris's queen was not Mara Sov, and that at the end of The Taken King, Eris was instead talking to Savathun directly. This theory basically said that Eris is a sleeper agent of sorts, or perhaps is being controlled and manipulated to kill Oryx so that Savathun can take his power. Savathun is known as the Witch Queen, and is obsessed with killing Oryx to gain his power. Now, this theory in my mind is the coolest, but it also makes the least amount of sense. Eris has spent her whole time of us knowing her, despising the Hive, wanting them all to die. So it doesn't really make sense for her to be helping them unless there was some way she could be controlled. The whole point of her character, the very one-dimensional side that we've seen, involves her just wanting to wipe out the Hive for what they've done to her. Not to mention they've already played the Uldren is evil card, so you could also make the argument that it's unlikely they'd do it or something similar to that 2 times in a row. However, at the same time, you could also make the slight argument that it's pretty ridiculous to assume Eris would just peace out to try to eliminate all of the Hive from existence by herself. So with that being said, she would have to be hiding some part of her true motive from us. Either that, or it's just lazy writing. If you're asking me, and honestly, what do I know? They'll probably just have Eris need some help killing Savathun or some other big bad Hive in some upcoming expansion before Destiny 3, where we fight the big scary triangles of death. But to me, that's not necessarily a bad thing. As I've said before, it's not really the premise of the story that makes it good, it's what you do with it. Like for example, The Last of Us is one of the best games I've ever played, but you can dumb down the story to, you play as a damaged man in the zombie apocalypse who has to escort a girl to a facility across the country because she's the cure to mankind. And even the newest God of War game, amazing story, but the general premise is just Kratos' wife dies, so you and your son must fulfill her last wish and take her ashes to the highest point in Midgard. It's not the general premise of the story that makes it great. It's the dynamic characters, the twists and turns, and the moral lessons you take away from them. That's what Destiny needs. It's got the basic premise, but they don't do anything with it. And I know this video has been about what's coming after Forsaken, but I really hope they can turn this around for Forsaken, because they killed their only developed character for God's sake. So guys, that is yet another episode of the mystery behind In the Books. Probably won't do another one with Destiny for a while, unless you guys message me on Twitter with tons of good ideas or suggestions, or you want to hear something, I don't know. I could get talked into it for sure. But let me know down below, in the dark below, Destiny's first expansion. Where do you think Eris has been all this time, and what is she up to? Leave your responses down in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, if you could please leave a like. If you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe. Thank you all so much for watching, and as always, I'll see you in the next one.